Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna devotees, thank you all so much for joining. We are still waiting for Radhika Raman Prabhu. Do we see Radhika Raman Prabhu on the chat? Did he join?
Yes.
I'm here, Prabhu. I'm here.
Oh, thank you so much, Prabhu. Thank you so much for joining. Devotees, welcome to Columbus Virtual Sunday Feast program. So the schedule for today is from 11:15 to 11:30. We had bhajans by Parikshit Prabhu, and then from 11:30 to from now until 12:30, we have a class by we have a very special guest today by His Grace Radhika Raman Prabhu, and then at 12:30 we will have question and answer session followed by announcements. So we request all the devotees to stay until the end of the program and be there for the announcements as well. So I'll give a brief introduction about Radhika Raman Prabhu. Radhika Raman Prabhu is a very wonderful young Vaishnava. He's one of my favorite speakers. He's a disciple of His Holiness Hanumat Prekshak Swami Maharaj. He was brought up by wonderful Vaishnava couple, Aruda Mataji and Anantarupa Prabhu. He was homeschooled along with his brother Gopal Hari Prabhu with a curriculum completely based on Srimad Bhagavatam. And he was enrolled, Prabhu was enrolled into Boise State University at the age of 13 and graduated, he finished his graduation at the age of 17 with the degree in philosophy. And then at the age of 22, Prabhu graduated from University of Oxford with a doctorate in Hindu studies. He was one of the youngest students to gain PhD from Oxford. And Prabhu has received several awards, multiple awards. And also Prabhu was invited, he was chosen and invited to greet Pope, and was the when Pope came to United States for the first time, and Prabhu presented the Bhagavad Gita to Pope also. And he was author of the Chaitanya Vaishnava Vedanta of Jiva Goswami, and also co-author of several Vaishnava books. And presently Prabhu serves as a member of Shastrik Advisory Council in ISKCON. So we are very fortunate to have Prabhu and Radhika Raman Prabhu and Aruda Mataji. They travel all across the US and different countries, and also they teach about homeschooling, how to do the best homeschooling. So we are really fortunate to have Radhika Raman Prabhu. There is so much to say about Radhika Raman Prabhu, but I know all the devotees are eagerly waiting to hear from him rather than me. So without further ado, Prabhu, please take over.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Ram Tirtha Prabhu, for the kind introduction. I know it's been a few years, I think, since I visited Columbus, and I'm so happy today to have everyone's company, if not physically, then at least virtually here, but still face to face. I can see many good friends in the audience. So thank you all. I want to thank Ram Tirtha Prabhu especially for organizing my talk, and so it's a pleasure to be here. Just to confirm, Prabhu, I'm speaking till 12:30, and then question and answers after that, right?
Yeah, I mean, even if it takes a little longer also, that's fine, Prabhu, since it's a virtual Sunday feast class. So, okay. I mean, there's a scheduled time, but it's a little longer is also fine. That's fine.
Yeah. No, it's nice to give more time for questions and discussion. So I'll try to keep it for the 12:30.
Thank you.
See what people. Thank you. So we can begin with an invocation. Om Jnanatimidandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So the devotees gave me a few different topics they suggested, Columbus devotees, to choose from. And the topic amongst the various options they gave that I chose was transforming knowledge from the head to the heart. How do we take knowledge and bring it from the head into the heart? So this is a topic that I've given quite a bit of thought to, just because my line of work, as Prabhu said, is very intellectual in nature. I'm an academic and a professor. And so questions of how do we, gathering knowledge and producing knowledge is my job in the university, and then also teaching that knowledge, right? So how do we do that in a way that's not just up here, intellectual, but also in the heart as well? So that's the topic for today. And I thought we could read something from Srila Prabhupada before we begin discussing. This is from Upadeshamrita, Nectar of Instruction. And it's a very nice verse, very famous one. And I won't read the whole purport, but just a part of it. Let's see. Prabhu, I'm going to share my screen. Is that possible? Let's see.
Yes, Prabhuji, you are the co-host, so you should be able to share your screen.
Okay. I see. It says host disabled participant screen sharing.
Check now, Prabhuji.
Yes, it's possible. Okay. So you can all see. Now, if at any point you cannot hear me clearly, then please interrupt me and let me know, or wave to me or something to get my attention. Okay, so this is verse number 2 from Srila Prabhupada's Nectar of Instruction, a very famous verse. I'll just read out the Sanskrit for you. Atyahara prayashascha prajalpo niyamagraha janasangascha lolyam cha shadbhir bhaktir vinashyati. Atyahara prayashascha prajalpo niyamagraha janasangascha lolyam cha shadbhir bhaktir vinashyati. Atyahara prayashascha prajalpo niyamagraha janasangascha lolyam cha shadbhir bhaktir vinashyati. So translation. One's devotional service is spoiled when he becomes too entangled in the following 6 activities. First, eating more than necessary or collecting more funds than required. 2, over-endeavoring for mundane things that are very difficult to obtain. 3, talking unnecessarily about mundane subject matters. 4, practicing the scriptural rules and regulations only for the sake of following them and not for the sake of spiritual advancement, or rejecting the rules and regulations of the scriptures and working independently or whimsically. 5, associating with worldly-minded persons who are not interested in Krishna consciousness. And 6, being greedy for mundane achievements. And then from the purport, it's quite long, so I'll just read the paragraph or 2 paragraphs that are relevant to, or directly relevant to the topic we have today. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur writes in his Anuvritti commentary that too much endeavor to acquire knowledge on the part of mental speculators or dry philosophers falls within the category of atyahara, collecting more than needed. According to Srimad Bhagavatam, the endeavor of philosophical speculators to write volumes of books on dry philosophy devoid of Krishna consciousness is entirely futile. The work of karmis who write volumes of books on economic development also falls within the category of atyahara. Similarly, those who have no desire for Krishna consciousness and who are simply interested in possessing more and more material things, either in the shape of scientific knowledge or monetary gain, all are included under the control of atyahara. Karmis labor to accumulate more and more for future generations, only because they do not know their future position, interested only in getting more and more money for their sons and grandsons. Such foolish persons do not even know what their position is going to be in the next life. There are many incidents that illustrate this point. Once a great karmi accumulated a vast fortune for his sons and grandsons, but later, according to his karma, he took his birth in a cobbler's house, located near the building which in his previous life he had constructed for his children. It so happened that when this very cobbler came to his former house, his former sons and grandsons beat him with shoes. Unless the karmis and jnanis become interested in Krishna consciousness, they will simply continue to waste their life in fruitless activities. So we'll come to this purport and explain it a little bit more in the course of the class. But to start off with, I want to, first of all, clarify what we mean by knowledge here in this talk. So there's many, many different kinds of knowledge out there, from, knowledge of engineering to medicine to philosophy to fixing your car. So many varieties of knowledge are there. What we're specifically talking about here is Divya Gyan, knowledge that is transcendental in nature and meant to uplift us to our ultimate destination. Okay, so that's the particular type of knowledge we're speaking of, or ultimate knowledge rather than immediate knowledge. Not that the immediate knowledge is not useful. Of course, it's useful for the various kinds of work that we do, but our concern for this class is speaking about that which is ultimate knowledge, which leads to liberation. So the first way I think that we can ensure that knowledge does not just stay in the head at the intellectual level, but actually moves into the heart. One of the most important characteristics of how devotees of Krishna relate with knowledge is by always, first of all, recognizing and honoring the source of that knowledge. This is a very important Vedic principle that it's so easy to forget in our world of information. Information, of course, means things that are useful, they're facts, but information in itself is not enough to be knowledge. For something to be knowledge, it has to lead to some kind of change, to transformation within ourselves. Some transformation, Bhagavatam says, for our betterment, for the betterment of human society. Vedyam vastavam atra vastu shivadam. It has to be true, vastavam. Whatever is Vedya or knowledge should be vastava, should be true, but it also should be shivada. It should be auspicious. It should be able to give welfare to others. It should do good for the world. So knowledge by its very nature, in other words, needs to be transformative. If it's not bringing about a change, then it's not knowledge, right? This is why the majority of what we see on the internet doesn't actually come in the category of knowledge, right? You can watch as many TV shows, or you can, watch as many videos, funny videos you want, and those may be entertaining, and they may even give a lot of information, facts, but unless that information somehow changes our outlook on the world and changes it for the better, it's not under the category of knowledge, right? So the bar for something to be knowledge is really, really high, right? It's knowledge is something that's definitely not something that's achievable through merely mechanical means, just by reading, for example, or just by gathering a bunch of facts. That's not that doesn't satisfy the bar for what knowledge is. So the Vedas actually make it very difficult for any information to enter the category of knowledge. It has to satisfy these two criteria. It has to be true, okay? And truth is also a difficult category, because at least for something to be transcendental knowledge, Divya Gyan, it has to be true not just now, but forever, right? It has to be, this is the nature of Sat. Sat means eternity. So when something is Divya Gyan or Sat Gyan, then that knowledge is always true, it's always real. And number two, it has to be beneficial for the world in the way that it's presented, in the way that it's given to others. So that's a tough bar. And the best way to ensure that when we receive that knowledge, it actually enters the heart and it becomes deep, and it doesn't purely remain as an intellectual gymnastics or exercise, is by recognizing what is the source of that knowledge. Where does it come from? This is very powerful because think about it like this. If you know the source of knowledge is reliable, then implicitly you can trust the content as true. Occasionally, the content may not even be true, and yet still that knowledge is beneficial. Let me give you an example. As parents, sometimes we make some small white lies to our children, right? When the kids were small and they didn't eat their food, we would say, quickly eat your food, otherwise the police will come and catch you. Now, of course, that wasn't true. The police don't catch kids who don't eat their food. And yet, that little piece of information I gave was still for their benefit. It was still good because it got them to eat in the most desperate circumstances, when they were too tired or they were too frustrated, they weren't eating, or they were sometimes just too hungry and they weren't eating, and sometimes they needed that extra push. So I mean to say, the vast majority of time, when knowledge comes from a reliable source, it will also be reliably true. But sometimes it may be only partially true. As when a grade school teacher tells a student, they say, you can only subtract smaller numbers from bigger numbers, right? So if you tell a grade school student, someone who's in first grade, you say, what's 3 minus 5? They're going to laugh and giggle and say, you can't do that. And we say, no, you can. And they'll say, no, my teacher told me, you can't do 3 minus 5. If you have 5 oranges, you can take 3 away. But if you have 3, how can you take away 5? Now, that student, that teacher may not be giving complete knowledge to their student, but because she or he is the child's well-wisher, therefore that knowledge, because it's coming from a reliable source, is just what the child needs to know. It's perfect for that child's development. So knowledge, when it comes from a reliable source, is something that is trustworthy. This is the foundation of the idea of Shabda Pramana. That Shabda Pramana means that of the various ways of getting knowledge, Shabda is the supreme, is the highest verbal testimony, scriptural testimony, the words of those who are pure and apta, who are advanced and reliable, because that knowledge is coming from a good source and therefore is trustworthy. On the other hand, if you look at the opposite side of things, even when knowledge is completely true, when it's coming from an unreliable source, it can be actually quite dangerous, right? When the person who is giving that knowledge doesn't know how to use it, how to wield it. Just like in Bhagavatam, you have the story of Ashwatthama, right? Who in the beginning of the first canto had the knowledge of the Brahmastra, and certainly that knowledge was factual, but because it was in the hands of someone who was not themselves good and noble, that knowledge was actually very dangerous. It was like a rogue nation having nuclear technology, right? It had the power to destroy the world. And of course, we live in a world today where we are surrounded by factual, powerful, effective knowledge that is often in the hands of those who have no ability to handle that knowledge. Just like we see all this technology, right? The motorized vehicles, for example, and industry and so on, and we're gradually coming to realize the dangerous effects that it has on our environment, on our health, on our communities and our societies, and no one saw this coming, right? Everyone thought, oh, it's true. All this technology is good. Let's just throw it out into the world, and people will like it. And of course, people did like it. But what are its effects? We have no idea, because like Ashwatthama, we know how to throw out the Brahmastra, but we don't know how to pull it back. Right? We don't know what to do. We know how to create the smartphone. Do we know how to control its effects in our life? No. We know how to create cars. Do we know how to control the effects it has in terms of pollution and accidents and so on? Not really. Right? So that knowledge is in the hands of someone who is not reliable, who has very limited knowledge as a source. So like Ashwatthama, we've got the Brahmastra, we know how to shoot it, and we have, but we don't know how to retract it. This is actually, it's a little bit off to the side, but this is actually a really fascinating point, that the ability to retract and the ability to dissolve and to destroy is considered to be a great Shakti, a great power in the Vedic culture. You see, Lord Brahma is the secondary creator of this world. Lord Vishnu preserves the world. Lord Shiva is famous for destroying, right? And one might say, well, you know, why do you need a whole deva to do destruction? I could do that for you. It's not difficult, you know, just yeah, bang things up and destroy them and break them apart and explode them. That sounds like a lot of fun and really easy, honestly. But no, according to the Vedas, destruction or dissolution, we should say, is actually very, very difficult and a very powerful Shakti. Think about how we create plastics in this world, right? Hundreds and millions of tons of plastic. And we use them and we take care of our plastic dishes and machines and all kinds of things. And when we're done with them, what do we not know how to do? We don't know how to destroy them. We don't know what to do. Even recycling them is such a challenge, right? It's such a challenge. And Lord Shiva is constantly recycling the world. He's technically not destroying it. He's recycling it. He's dissolving it and bringing it so that the Lord can bring it back again. And to take all that energy, to conserve it perfectly, and to replenish the earth. If only we knew how to do that, we would not be stuck with tons and tons of plastics in our oceans. We would not be stuck with toxic waste from nuclear plants in the ground. We would not be stuck with all kinds of different chemicals and problems, because we're not Lord Shiva, right? We don't have the ability of Mahadev. So anyway, that's a little bit off the topic, but the point is that knowledge, when we understand what its source is, if that source is not reliable, then even that knowledge may be true, still it's not for our good. So therefore it doesn't meet the bar of what knowledge is. Now we see this very nicely in the Vaishnava culture, this importance of the source. If you read Srila Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita as it is, and you read his introduction, why does Srila Prabhupada criticize other editions of Bhagavad Gita? Not because they don't know Sanskrit, not because they're not giving word for word, or not because they're don't have purports. The reason he criticizes is because although they are eager to receive the knowledge of the Gita, what are they not paying attention to? The source of that knowledge, right? They're not paying attention to Krishna. And because of that, Prabhupada says that knowledge that they have from the Gita is still factual, but it's ineffective. It doesn't actually change anything in their hearts or in the hearts of others. Not one person, he says, has become a devotee of Krishna as a result of all these hundreds of editions of Bhagavad Gita. It fails to have the transformative effect that is promised in the book, because the source of that knowledge is not only not recognized, not only is the source ignored, but the source is actively rejected, and therefore that knowledge will be ineffective. Even if you look at the material sciences in India, like Ayurveda, the science of medicine, the science of life, or yoga, the physical yoga in terms of keeping proper bodily health, then and mental health, then each one of these, you know, when an Ayurvedic doctor prescribes medicine, the first thing that he tells the patient to do before taking that medicine is to recite a prayer to Lord Dhanvantari, the form of Lord Vishnu, from whom the knowledge of medicine emerges. In other words, without offering respects to the source of knowledge of that knowledge of medicine, how is that medicine going to be effective and beneficial, salutary in the long run? If you do yoga, you can do yoga practice and you can go to any one of hundreds of studios in the city of Columbus. And you can enter any class and they'll immediately sit you down and have you do downward dog and upward cat and so many different poses, right? And you can jump right in. But if you go to a proper yoga teacher, especially a Vaishnava yoga teacher, or even just one who's properly grounded in the tradition, that's not how they begin. They don't tell you to do downward dog first. What do they tell you to do first? Offer obeisances, respects to the source of yogic knowledge, to Guru, to the spiritual master, and to Rishi Patanjali, from whom that knowledge comes. So this is the culture, not just for spiritual knowledge, but for any form of knowledge, to recognize, to always remember, there's a person behind this. And once you know the person, here's the beautiful thing, that knowledge, actually you can go deeper. You can understand the meaning of that knowledge even more. It's not just a cultural etiquette thing. It is an etiquette thing, but it also makes that knowledge more effective in very practical ways. When you recognize that Krishna is a person and Arjuna is a person, and that the Gita is a dialogue, it's not a monologue, it's a dialogue. It's not a philosophical, individual separate thing. And you're not treating it out of context, then immediately you can understand more deeply what the message of Krishna is. You can resolve contradictions in the Gita. Why is Krishna in one place saying, do your dharma, karmanyeva adhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana, and then again saying, sarva dharman parityajya mamekam sharanam, give up everything, all your dharmas. From a purely academic perspective, the Gita is a text that has multiple strands in it which contradict each other. What else are you going to say, right? But if you recognize it as a dialogue between two people, and we understand that Arjuna is a person who's got certain feelings and desires and anxieties, and we also recognize that Krishna is a person who's also got attachments towards Arjuna and has certain desires and goals, then immediately we can resolve. We can understand how the Gita comes together and make sense of it. And that's the beauty. When we understand the source, we also understand the context of that knowledge. Even amongst devotees, sometimes we have a habit of quoting verses or statements by Srila Prabhupada out of context. We'll just find a quote, we'll pull the quote, and we'll paste it. Right? And especially with internet online technology, it's very easy to search and to cut and paste. And I've seen so many quotations pasted in support of a certain idea. And when you go back to the context of that quote, Prabhupada in that sentence is speaking very forcefully on point A, but just 3 sentences down, he mitigates it. He says, well, but if A, A is like this, but also B might work also. And he softens it. And so someone's trying to make a very fanatical point, and if you look at the context, Prabhupada is not saying that, right? Because the context was not seen, neither by the person who submitted the quote or the person who persons who read it. Or sometimes if we understand a quote in a particular context, we see, oh, this is coming from a letter. And that letter was addressed to a devotee with a very specific circumstance. And Prabhupada gave other instructions, sometimes the opposite, in other circumstances for others. A very good example of this in relation to our topic today on knowledge is cultivating knowledge of the Sanskrit language. learning Sanskrit. Now, if you read Srila Prabhupada's instructions on learning Sanskrit, sometimes he'll write to his disciples, he'll say, what is the use of learning Sanskrit? It takes a long time, a lot of effort, 12 years or more. And I've already translated all these books into English. So just read and apply in your life and make your life perfect. And in other places, he encourages his disciples. Pradyumna Prabhu, for example, there's a beautiful lecture, wonderful, where Srila Prabhupada praises him with so much feeling. He says, practically the real work in these books, my disciple, Pradyumna Prabhu, has done. Pradyumna Prabhu was Prabhupada's Sanskrit editor for his books. And he said, practically all the real work has been done by Pradyumna. I cannot thank him. He's so saying with so much feeling. And he says, I have asked him to learn Sanskrit. Also for his Gurukulas, Prabhupada said that our children should learn Sanskrit language so that they can study our books very nicely. So different instructions, right? In different contexts, depending on the person who's involved. So recognizing that source, where is the knowledge coming from? What is the context of the knowledge? Why is this? It's a person giving that knowledge. Why is that person giving this knowledge? It adds so much information. It prevents that knowledge from being misused in the wrong ways, of quotes and shlokas being whipped out and deployed in improper ways, just by recognizing what is the source, what is the context of that knowledge. And in a even more positive sense, if you read Srimad Bhagavatam and you're reading a particular verse, right? And there you see it's a prayer to the Lord. But if you see where that prayer is coming from, who is speaking the prayer, and what is that devotee's mood? What is their feeling towards Krishna? What is their relationship with the Lord? Just like with Queen Kunti's prayers, what makes them so powerful? It's not just the fact that they're beautiful prayers, they are, but it's also because of who she is, right? And what she's been through as a person, how much she's suffered in her life, that when she says, Krishna, please let those miseries come again and again, boy, it means a lot. Right? If it were coming from someone who had a really easy and pleasant life, then it wouldn't mean so much. Right? It would be a little bit not so effective. So when we read Bhagavatam, when we read the prayers of the devotees, always asking, who's speaking this? And how is that devotee's mood present within what I'm reading? How is the person present within the content? How is the person present within the knowledge? That's how a Vaishnava learns. That's how we take that knowledge and we take it to heart, is by recognizing the heart that went into it. There was someone's heart that went into that knowledge. There's someone's heart that is present in that knowledge. By finding that heart, by recognizing it, we can take it to our own heart and make it effective there. So that's the first point I wanted to make in terms of making knowledge transformative from the head to the heart, is always recognizing the source of the knowledge, finding the person within it. The second thing I wanted to mention is that we always remember the purpose of that knowledge and ask the purpose of that knowledge in our own lives. I know we're taught knowledge is good for its own sake. And in some sense it is. But for a devotee, knowledge is not an end in itself. It is a means to an end. It is a useful, it's a powerful tool. Jnana karmadhyanavitam, anyabhilashita shunyam, jnana karmadhyanavitam, anukulyasya sankalpa. So this is anukulyasya. This is that knowledge when it's favorable towards Krishna, right? Anukula. And it's used in the service of bhakti, not being covered by or not covering that bhakti. Jnana karma jnanavitam. Then that knowledge is actually worthwhile. In other words, knowledge for the jnani, for those who are on the path of jnana, knowledge is in itself an end. But for the devotee, Krishnanushilanam, bhaktir uttama, right? That knowledge is not an end in itself. It has to be Krishnanushilanam. It has to be done for the purpose of service to Krishna. That's how Rupa Goswami contextualizes, how he situates that knowledge, that it's meant for a particular goal. So whenever we are on the journey of seeking knowledge, whether it's through studies or whether it's through a hobby or because we want to learn something or we're interested, we should always ask ourselves, what is the purpose of the knowledge? Why am I going on this intellectual journey? And for a devotee, we only accumulate as much knowledge as is useful for our service. Not less, not more. Then that knowledge is not going to come back to bite us. Then that knowledge is not going to be the genesis of pride, of arrogance, of I know it all in that complex. When we have a practical use and application for that knowledge. Everyone's service, all of us, require us to know a different body of knowledge, right? A different collection of knowledge is important for us. This is our buddhi, this is the intelligence. And this collection of knowledge, buddhi is more substantial. Manas and buddhi, the mind and the intelligence, are more substantial than even the physical body. It's more real. The evidence for that is very simple. A person, their physical body dies, but the books they write, the teachings they give, they live on much, much longer. Right? It takes a much longer time, sometimes hundreds, sometimes thousands of years, for that body to die, the body of knowledge, the mind, the intelligence, the buddhi. When the mind is determined for something, when the intelligence has fixed its mind on something, it can move bodies, it can move armies, right? And we see that in the world. You can force someone, you can whip them into working hard, and it'll go this far. But if you convince them about your cause, they'll be willing to climb to the ends of the earth in order to do that. Manas and buddhi, mind and intelligence, are very, very powerful. And each one of us, for our service to the Lord, we've got a certain collection of knowledge that we need to acquire. And as that service changes, as it expands, as it grows, that knowledge collection will also adjust. We'll need to learn new things. And so long as we are learning those new things and we know why, we know what the purpose is, the intention behind it is clear. This is what I need for the service of the Lord. Then that knowledge will help us serve the Lord, and it'll always help us maintain humility, and it'll help us maintain goodness, and it'll be beneficial for others as a result. And when we just pursue knowledge for the ride, for the stimulation that it brings, knowledge can bring pleasures far beyond the pleasures of the body. There's no thrill ride that we can go on that is as thrilling as the thrill that comes from knowledge. This is why jnanis give up the joys of the physical body. They practically give up eating, they practically give up sleeping, they give up all kinds of relationships just for the sake of knowledge. And I know people like this. The academic world is full of them. They're truly vairagis in this sense. They've given up all their attachment to this world in the pursuit, the pointed pursuit of knowledge. Because the joys and the thrills and the pleasures of eating the bananas of the mind are extraordinary. They're much, much better than any food we can eat physically. And so, but when we pursue knowledge for that thrill only, it becomes an addiction, just like any other physical addiction. And gradually it will cause decay in our physical bodies and for others, because it will lead to the most important result of purposeless knowledge, which is pride. When that knowledge has no service component. Just going back to that Sanskrit example. When Prabhupada saw that knowledge of Sanskrit was actually something that was useful for the Lord's service, that there was some engagement for it, he encouraged his disciples, his students, to learn Sanskrit. And when he saw that it was just a, idle curiosity of the mind, he said, no, it's not worth it. Stay focused on practicing bhakti. So this is the difference between Maharaj Ambarish and Durvasa Muni, between the Yajnik Brahmanas and their wives. Both had knowledge. Durvasa Muni, Maharaj Ambarish, both were very knowledgeable. Both the Yajnik Brahmanas and their wives had knowledge, different bodies of knowledge. But on the one hand, one was pursuing it without the intention of service, and the other was pursuing it with the intention of serving the Lord. That's why one got in trouble for that knowledge, and the other was liberated as a result of that knowledge. So that's the second point I want to make. First, understanding the source, the person within that knowledge, and the second, understanding the purpose. So person, purpose. And the third and last point I want to make in terms of ensuring that that knowledge doesn't just stay in the head, but goes into the heart, is making sure we apply that knowledge. And there's two aspects to this application. The first is application within our own lives. When we read books, when we memorize verses, when we gather knowledge, we always have to ask ourselves that question. What does this mean in my own life? How will that transform who I am and what I do? How will it improve me as a person? For those of us who are regularly practicing as devotees, we do so many things on a regular basis. In the morning, we wake up and we sing the Gurvashtaka prayers. Samsara Dava Nalalita Loka. We do the morning program. Sing our Tulsi Puja prayers. We sing the Singha Pranam. At least that, if nothing else. We read Srimad Bhagavatam. We do our prayers. We bow down before the deities. We chant our rounds. So many things. And yet, so much of that can be on the level of only karma, right? At least speaking for myself. It just becomes a karmic activity, karma yoga. I'm just doing the action. Why? Because it's a ritual. And it's a good one. There's no doubt. I mean, we become pious. We get good karma as a result of singing the prayers. But it becomes mechanical. Think about this. How many times when we sing Tulsi Puja, do we actually think about what we're singing, the meaning of it? Because that one song is practically more advanced than anything else we sing on a regular basis. Very intimate song. Sakhir Anugato Koro. We're asking to become a Sakhi, a a friend, a follower of the friends of the gopis, of Srimati Radharani. We're asking, Nija Dasi, make me your own maidservant. Even we men are asking to become a Dasi, not Dasa, Dasi. Right? There's a lot of depth. Very, very intimate song that is. And I know for myself, I'm singing it and trying to get in the right mood. And within a few seconds, the mind is wandering somewhere and I'm thinking what the next line is, or how is my voice sounding, or, I need to, so many things come into the mind at that moment. And as we're singing, if we can even focus on one verse and its meaning and really sing it with that sense, it becomes a totally different experience. So try this if you're not doing it already. As you're going through your daily practice, if singing the whole thing, first of all, learning the meanings of the verses of the songs that we're singing, understanding what each one is saying. And if that is difficult to focus on the entire thing, then find one sentence, one line, one verse that you particularly like. And at least when that verse comes, wake up the intelligence and sing it with meaning. For me in Tulsi Puja, the song, the line, Seva adhikaro diye koro nija dasi. That one always wakes me up, right? If I'm not focusing on the song. Such a nice prayer. Seva adhikaro diye. Please give me the adhikar, the privilege, the right to do service. Wow. I mean, service is something that most of us think as something we're required to do. You have to do. But here the song is saying it's a privilege. It's a right that you're demanding. I have the right to serve, and don't take that away. Please don't take it away. What an opposite way the world typically thinks of service and work. I have the right to leisure. I have the right to recreation. I have the right to be respected. I have the right to be appreciated. But this song is saying, I've got the right to serve. And please don't take that right away. That's what adhikar means. It means privilege. It means right. So powerful. Same thing with the Gurvashtaka prayers. With the Namaste Narasimhaya verse. Right? Srila Prabhupada explains it so beautifully. He says, Tavakara kamalavare nakam adbhuta shringam. When Prabhupada explains it, he says, look at how Jayadev Goswami is putting these two things together. Tavakara kamalavare. His hands, the Lord's hands, are kara kamala. They're like lotuses. And what's the quality of a lotus? But many qualities. But they're soft, right? Lotuses are soft. They're petals. And they're fragrant. So the Lord's hands are like lotuses. They're soft. Tava kara kamalavare nakam adbhuta shringam. But the nails, nakam, which are coming from where? His hands, are adbhuta shringam. Shringam means in this context, like swords. They're pointed edges. So there's these hard nails that Prabhupada says are as hard as thunderbolts, like swords, coming from hands that are as soft as lotuses. And then Prabhupada says, wow, this is the Lord's achintya shakti. This is how the Lord is inconceivable. He's so inconceivable, right? Who can take opposites like that and juxtapose? Have you ever seen a bodybuilder who's ripped and muscles and all of that, whose body is soft like a lotus? No. And have you seen anyone with a soft body like a lotus who's ripped like a bodybuilder? No. These the two things don't go together, but in the Lord, they do. His hands never become hard. That's a fact. They're always kamala. They're soft like lotuses. But his nails, they're like thunderbolts. From lotuses grow thunderbolts. From lotuses come swords. That's why Jayadev Goswami is saying, Adbhuta Shringam, Adbhuta. This is really amazing. So now, when we know the meaning of what's being said, and not just the meaning deepens. As we sing with meaning, the amazing thing is the meaning becomes richer and richer. This is the beauty. The knowledge keeps on coming. As we focus on it, it keeps on coming. When we chant with meaning, we realize there's not the meaning, there's even more meaning. There's more feeling that is present there. So if we chant mechanically, that's nice. If we chant with meaning, that's even better. And hopefully, if we chant with meaning, that will lead us to being able to chant with feeling. And when we can chant with feeling, then we've made it. That's the goal of the bhakta, the devotee, to be able to really call out to Krishna. So what we're describing here is not something that takes hours and hours of work. Sometimes people feel that to get knowledge means hours and hours of study, and I've got busy lives, and I can't do that. No, what we're describing here is not something that takes hours of work. It just takes more quality, more intensity in the same amount of work that we're already doing. Deepening that quality of knowledge, taking it from the head to the heart by applying it in our lives and recognizing this is what it means. In this context, I want to share to you to show you how devotees can take that knowledge and bring it to heart. I want to share with you a wonderful poem written by Dravida Prabhu. Maybe some of you may know Dravida Prabhu. He's been, if you don't know, you actually know him, whether you know that you know him or not. He's been the editor of Srila Prabhupada's books for now decades. He serves the BBT as one of the most dedicated and steady devotees engaged with BBT service. And very, very wonderful person, and a brahmachari for so many years. And he wrote this, he likes to write poetry in his free time, rhyming poetry in English. And a lot of these are renditions of the prayers of the acharyas, but with his own heart invested in it. And here, I'll share my screen again. And I just want to share a couple of verses from his prayers. So I think many of you will know the 8 verses every morning recited as the Gurvashtra during Mangalarti, beginning with Samsara Dava Nalali Velo. Okay. And this is, you can see it on the screen. This is, if you can't see the verses on the screen, then someone please let me know. But there should be Srila Prabhupada Kripashtaka, and he wrote this in 2001. It's inspired by the Gurvashtaka of Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. This is another very nice thing to do in order to bring the knowledge from head to heart, is to always remind ourselves who is writing the verses, the poems that we read. Is it and by understanding their life and their background and who they are, it's really very wonderful. So I remember in my own family, maybe some of you have seen this biography of Narottam Das Thakur by Shitala Mataji. And when we got this, it's a wonderful, wonderful book. And we, as a family, especially my children, they read this book on Narottam Das Thakur's life. And all of a sudden, singing the Guru Charana Padma prayers was so much more exciting because we knew who he was and who he was singing to, Narottam Das Thakur. So in this way, knowing, oh, who is Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur? what is his contribution? What is his mood? It invests the singing with so much more meaning. But anyway, for those of us who know the meaning of the Samsara Dava prayers, each verse, you'll be able to see how Dravida Prabhu has taken the Samsara prayers and he's invested it with, he's conveyed the meaning of it. He's faithfully conveying the meaning, but also investing it with his own feeling for the Lord, right? He's made it his own, the knowledge. He's transferred it from the head to the heart. So I'll just read a few verses. Verse number 1. Trapped within samsara's all-consuming blazing fire, we had no hope of rescue till your Guru's strong desire inspired and empowered you to boldly cross the sea and teach the truths of bhakti so some souls would be set free. O Prabhupada, your mercy is my only treasure now. Unto your soothing lotus feet I bow. Vande Guru Shri Charanaravind. Patiently, you taught us how to chant the holy name and how to dance and how to sing and what was life's true aim. And thus you gave us Lord Chaitanya's teachings unalloyed and saved us from the all-devouring Mayavadi void. O Prabhupada, your mercy is my only treasure now. Unto your soothing lotus feet I bow. When Krishna Bhakti spread and you had centers here and there, you introduced the worship of the deities so fair. And soon throughout the world, their lordship smiled upon your crew and nourished strong devotion to themselves and unto you. O Prabhupada, your mercy is my only treasure now. Unto your soothing lotus feet I bow. So this is Shri Vigrahara Dhananityanana Shringar Tanmandir Marjana. Worship of the deities is something that the Guru does. Now, one of the things I always find really funny, humorous in Mangalarti time is when you sing through the Gurvashtaka and you think about what it means. At 4:30 in the morning, we're singing, heartfully singing about the importance of prasadam, of eating food, right? This is probably the only religion where people get up 4:30 in the morning and sing about food and how wonderful it is. So here's verse number 4, okay? Chaturvidha Shri Bhagavat Prasado Swadvanna Triptan Hari Bhakta Sanghan. So Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur is saying 4 different kinds of food there are. So he says, Prasadam was your special weapon. No one could resist. Once the Sunday feast had started, no one could desist. Halwa, sweet rice, crisp pakoras, sabjis, puris, rice. With these and other preps, you did our tongues and hearts entice. O Prabhupada, your mercy is my only treasure now. Unto your soothing lotus feet I bow. Okay, I'm going to end with one more. It's difficult to stop because these are really nice. But one more. This one is very sweet. It's about his books and it's reflecting upon the verse Shri Radhika Madhavayorapara Madhurya Leela Gunarupanam. The books you showered down upon the masses and on us taught scripture's sacred essence, bhakti pure and nectarous. And while you wrote, you relished Sri Sri Radha Krishna's names and forms and pastimes, qualities and everlasting fame. O Prabhupada, your mercy is my only treasure now. Unto your soothing lotus feet I bow. So as you can see, there are 58 pages of such kinds of verses and prayers, all drawing, almost all of them, restating the verses of the Acharyas, but imbuing them with his own feeling and with his own devotion. Clearly, this knowledge has been applied. Right? It has gone from head to heart. And he has kindly said, Dravida Prabhu, that anyone who wants a copy of these I can share them. So he's very, very free and generous with sharing his work. So you can let me know, or rather you can let Ramatirtha Prabhu know afterwards, and anyone who wants it, I'll send him a copy and he can share it with the devotees. So our time is coming to a close, or it has come to a close. I just want to add one last point here, which is about application. I said there were 2 aspects of application. The first is application in our own lives. And the second is applying by giving that knowledge to others. As a full-time teacher, I know that there is no way to internalize knowledge more effectively than to teach it to others. When I first started teaching, I would go into the classroom and I thought, I know this stuff. I got a PhD on it. I've studied it for weeks, months, sometimes years. I know this material. And when you stand in front of students, you realize, well, maybe not. I don't know it half as well as I thought I did. Because you don't know how to present it in a way that is applicable to your audience. And that means you don't really know it. And this is why Prabhupada emphasized so much of giving Krishna consciousness to others, of distributing the knowledge. Because when we give it, we know it. And moreover, when we see the transformation in others, we become more convinced ourselves. The funny thing is that it's easier to see the transformation in other people than it is to see the transformation in ourselves. I give you a simple example. Every day you get up, you brush your teeth, you look at yourself in the mirror, and you look just the same like yesterday, right? Nothing really different. And then you go meet someone who hasn't seen you for a year, and they'll go, oh, you've lost so much weight. Or you've gotten a lot of gray hair, what happened? And that's the first time you go, oh, really? I didn't notice. Right? Or someone looks at your kids and they say, wow, you've grown really tall. And I didn't notice that they grew really tall because I see them every day, right? So it's much easier to see transformation in others than it is to see transformation in ourselves because we're too close. You need some distance to see that transformation. And so this is another reason why giving knowledge to others helps us internalize it, is because we see that knowledge, that transformation in someone. And those of us who do this regularly, who teach, who preach, who give classes will know that when we see that conviction in someone else's faith, that person says, thank you so much for helping me. But really who's being helped in addition to that person is ourselves. We realize, oh, wow, it rebuilds, it kindles that faith again, it strengthens it within our own hearts. It also helps us to maintain that humility with our knowledge. People who are too arrogant about their knowledge, they cannot teach. Because their platform is so high that they cannot stoop down to the level of the person to whom they're speaking. It's, you're no good. You're not worthy of knowing what I know. But when we teach, then through the process of teaching, we realize I'm not the person in control of this knowledge. Whether it has an effect in this person's heart has only this much to do with me and this much to do with them and with Krishna, who facilitates that recognition. Sarvasya chaham hridi sannivishto matta smriti jnanam apohanam cha. That knowledge is coming from Krishna. So it's not me, it's them, it's Krishna. I am there and I have a role to play, but I'm not everything. When you learn something good, when you become knowledgeable, it becomes very easy to think it's all about me. I know, I'm the best. And when we give it to others, we recognize my best knowledge and I present it in such a nice way. And yet, no, it didn't have the effect that I was hoping. In fact, it was misunderstood. And we recognize, no, I'm only half the equation, maybe a third, maybe just 1/5 of the equation. So these things, right? Recognizing the person within the knowledge, recognizing the purpose of the knowledge, and applying the knowledge in our own lives and in giving that knowledge to others. in this way, we can take that knowledge and we can move it from the intellectual space to the heart space. We can take that knowledge and it can be transformative to ourselves. And when that happens, then that knowledge becomes actually useful in our practice of bhakti, right? It becomes something that we can actually apply very, very nicely. And rather than becoming something that's poisonous, it becomes like nectar. Right? That knowledge becomes liberative in our knowledge, in our life. It becomes powerful, it becomes liberative, and it helps us on our path to bhakti. So I will stop here. I'm sorry I went 10 minutes over time, but at this point, I think we still have some time to take questions and comments from the devotees who are listening. So, thank you. Ram Tirtha Prabhu, do you typically organize the questions then? I haven't been following what's been coming on chat and stuff like that.
Sure, Prabhu. Thank you so much for the wonderful class and very, very nicely presented. How to take knowledge from the head to the heart. It is very, very useful for all of us, because the topic that I put there, because we have seen so many devotees, they have so much knowledge, but when it comes to practicality, we see that they struggle under certain situations. So that's the reason I put that topic out there, but it is really, really helpful. Thank you so much, Prabhu. So we have several questions. I think Mother Rukmini Mataji would like to go first. Please go ahead, Mataji.
Thank you so much for the wonderful class, and I pray that I can apply it in my life. So I actually had 3 things that I might ask you to elaborate on, and each of them, I mean, I think 3 is probably too many things, so you can pick one. So one of them is actually about the verse that you just quoted, Bhagavad Gita 15:15, where Krishna says he is the source of remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. So I always felt forgetfulness was very interesting. And I was wondering if you could elaborate on how forgetfulness is perhaps part of the process of transforming knowledge from the head to the heart. And the second possibility is, so in the Shikshashtakam 1, Mahaprabhu says that he's glorifying Shri Krishna Sankirtanam, and he says it's Vidya Vadhu Jivanam. So it's the life and soul of Vidya, education. Vidya, I guess, is a little bit different from Gyan, but so that's, we can read it and we can just memorize it, but how do we understand that, and does that help us to transform, to do this, to transform the knowledge from going from the head to the heart? And the third thing is this point that you made very nicely about considering the source of the knowledge, and that the source is a person. So besides the source, there's also sometimes a medium. So you had already mentioned, for instance, the Dravida Prabhu, he's taking something that exists and he's making it his own when he's conveying it through his poetry. So another possibility that we can look at is that, so for instance, we read Srila Prabhupada's books, and Srila Prabhupada gave them to us, but we also hear, we have the privilege of hearing from Srila Prabhupada's disciples, who are, they're the medium from which we hear, and they each have a different flavor. And so what is the relationship with the medium? And, that sort of goes into a larger question of, the relationship between Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. But I mean, it's maybe simpler to just, think of this one example, the medium and the source, like how much do we relate to the medium, and make that a personal relationship also. And also, so pick one of those. And also, I sent you a WhatsApp with a question about the paper on July 20th, and maybe you didn't see it, so I'm just reminding you. Thank you.
Yes. So thank you so much. It's really good to see you. Rukmini Prabhu and myself, we serve together on the Shastric Advisory Council, and so it's and there's not much opportunity for face-to-face interaction. So this is really good, and it's really difficult. Also, what you've asked is because you've given this choice of three really wonderful topics, and I feel the urge to speak about all of them. But I think we won't be able to do that, as you said, in the interest of time. But I wanted to say something about forgetfulness, because that is something that I really, that verse has always, that element has always been very interesting, very curious to me. And there's other ways of translating the word apohanam also, but specifically the translation that we receive from Srila Prabhupada and from others about forgetfulness, I think is really interesting and very powerful. And it goes back to this point about Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva that I was making earlier, that both the creation of something and its preservation and its wrapping up are all very, very useful and very important, very powerful things. And especially with forgetfulness, we see how forgetfulness in both the conditioned state and the liberated state are actually very wonderful things that facilitate the gathering of knowledge and also of service. So sometimes I get a student who has learned something that I'm trying to teach and has learned it incorrectly, right? And I have to tell them, I'm so sorry, but I have to help you unlearn what you've just learned, right? I have to help you forget. And that's very important, otherwise they cannot learn it correctly. In other contexts, forgetfulness, like in the various process of coming into this world of birth itself, we learn that the process of birth helps us to forget the traumas that we've been through, both within the womb and in our previous lives. And that forgetfulness is a great, great blessing, because we can, in some sense, begin fresh. Even though we have the samskaras of our past, but nevertheless, we have at least the conscious ability to say, I want to try, and I want to try again. And similarly, when a child goes through some kind of trauma, or even an adult in this life, then often the process of recovering from that and letting go of that, right? So I take the word forgetfulness in a very broad sense, not so much just of sort of head scratching forgetfulness where, oh, what was the verse? I can't remember. Not just that, but forgetfulness in a broader sense of letting go, of being able to not just take, which is knowledge. The process of remembrance and the process of gaining knowledge is, as we read in this verse, atyahara. It's a process of taking, right? It's a process of receiving, of holding on, of gripping. But for everything that we take, for whatever that is to be useful and helpful in the material world, we also need to know when to let go, right? And sometimes our experiences in this world, it's so important that we have to have the ability to let go. Even in the liberated state, even in the spiritual world, right? The fact that Krishna makes Mother Yashoda forget who he actually is, quote unquote, actually, in terms of his majesty. He makes her forget his majesty through his Yogamaya potency. Right? And not only that, but he allows himself to forget. As he's being chased by Mother Yashoda's stick, he allows himself to forget that he is Bhibhayam. He is the one who is feared by fear personified. That power of Yogamaya is coming directly from Krishna. And it is what allows his Leela to take place, right? That for the devotee to offer themselves in love to the Lord without hesitation, because they're able to forget his majesty. Similarly, in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna makes Arjuna forget he makes Arjuna forget his own knowledge so that he can be in a confused state, so he can ask questions that benefit the world. So in this way, forgetfulness or letting go of knowledge is something that's in fact a very, very rich idea, and goes with the overall sense in the Vedic culture that every step of the cycle is important, not just creation, bringing into being, not just maintenance, holding on, but also letting go. That's also wrapping up. That's also being able to know when to put away something that you have, right? That is also so, for a teacher also, it's so important to know when to put away the detail, the depth of the knowledge that you have, right? If you dump everything on the student, and say, okay, here it is. It's overwhelming and it's impossible for the student to learn. You need to be able to say, this aspect of my knowledge, I'm going to quote unquote forget for now and just give this much because this is what is appreciable. So yeah, that's what I want to say in terms of seeing that picture. But thank you for that wonderful question for all three. I wish we had time to go into the others as well.
Thank you so much, Prabhu.
We have a next question from Sreshta. Go ahead, Sreshta.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Thank you so much
Hare
for your
Krishna.
very enlightening class. This is Alec and I'm Shrestha.
Hare Krishna.
My question was, first I wanted to say that as a postdoctoral scientist, I could relate to the fact that in academia, there's a thrill for gaining knowledge. That is very true and unfortunate though. But my question was, as an aspirant to become a teacher in the future, how do I teach students scientific facts that are contradictory to our Shastras or Vedas, such as the Big Bang Theory, the Darwin's law of evolution? So that is my question.
So I'm not a scientist, but I can relate to what you're saying, because even in my own field, as a professor of religious studies and of history, I have to present everything in view of a certain academic integrity, right? I have to present multiple perspectives and viewpoints and historical ideas that may not necessarily match with the absolute truth that we receive from the scriptures, right? And from the parampara. So this is there. This is a reality, I think, of all of us in this world, and that we have to exist in contexts where we're not working in relation to the absolute truth. We're working in relation to the relative truth, right? And so one of the wonderful things about, I think, academia and about scholarship and scientific or historical knowledge is that by its very nature, it is always contextualized, right? As scholars, we always are taught to put everything within context and to see both its successes and its limitations. And so I think at the very least, as devotees, what we can do is when we present knowledge that is not the absolute truth, then we present it for what it is, namely relative truths, right? That this is something that I'm telling you, which is, we always contextualize it. This is the point in history in which this theory emerged. These are the people who presented the theory. This is what that theory has been useful for. And these are the limitations of the theory. And these are the groups of people who argue against it in scientific or historical terms, right? Because this is the one virtue of academic knowledge, if done right, that academia, scholarship does not itself regard its own self to be absolute. Those in the academic world who present their knowledge as absolute truth are being unfaithful to that knowledge itself, right? They're not following the proper norms of that academic knowledge. Because the one thing we know as scientists, as historians, as scholars, is that any knowledge that emerges as a result of our intellectual processes, as a result of our experimentation, is always subject to review and refutation. It's always going to be changed in the next 50 years, 100 years. And just giving our students that perspective is doing them a great service. The sad part is when people present the Big Bang Theory as the absolute truth, when even in physics, there are important questions raised about that theory and alternatives presented, right? The sad thing is when people present history in a certain absolute sense, when they know as historians that 50 years from now, that theory will be questioned, and that even now there are those who put question marks on it. Right? So that's the very least we can do, is present what it is, present its source, its origins, and its question marks at the same time, so that we give our students the ability to think critically about what it is that we're presenting. And then we offer a prayer to the Lord and we say, please, Krishna, do what you feel is best for this person. They're sincere, guide them on the right path. And then we leave. We do our job as best we can, and then we leave it up to the Lord. In my context, I can help them. I can present the varieties of different options there are, but one of those is always Krishna, because we're talking about religion and we're talking about history. So we can always present that as well. So in your own line of work, you find what it is that you can present that is Krishna, that is connected to Krishna in some way. That you may not be able to say the word Krishna, but Krishna is somewhere to be found, even in your area of knowledge. And find what it is that you can present to them that will move them just a little bit in the right direction. And I cannot say this is the best, because then I will lose my job. I hold as my heart, I cannot give fully, but I can present it as it is. I can present it for what it is, amongst a variety. So I present Shaivism as it is. I don't demean it. I don't put it down. I don't criticize it. I present it as it is. I present Krishna as it is. I present impersonalist philosophy as it is. And then I leave it up to the students. And I tell them, or I tell Krishna rather, I say, this is the best I can do. Please, now you are within their hearts. You guide them in the way that you think is best, based upon their own sincerity. And if we have given them the opportunity to hear and move in the right direction, even a little bit, we have done them service, right? We have done good. And we've done our job. And then in the temple, you can be more free about who you are.
Amazing. Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhu, for the great answer.
Prabhu, it's about 12:57. How much time do you have, Prabhuji?
I generally go to bed just before 10 o'clock at night. So there's now 10 hours left for myself. But really, I don't want to keep all of you. I really enjoy your association, but I know that you have a Sunday feast program and you have to move on. So please end it at whatever time you think is best for the devotees.
Sure. Yeah, we have a few more questions, and let's see how much we can go. Sumitra Mataji.
I'll try to be more brief in my answers so that we can get through more people's questions.
Sumitra Mataji, please go ahead.
Sure. Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you very much. As always, very, very clarifying lecture and a lot to unpack from an hour. I think what was most clarifying to me was that while we read Sri Prabhupada's books or go through the program, that we need to be very intentional to be able to fully appreciate. If I have extra 15 minutes in the day that I wasn't expecting to have, I probably would spend more time introspecting than saying, let me listen to yet another lecture, but let me go back to what I've already heard. Practically, how does that introspection and reflection occur? Does it happen in solitude with the devotee family, community of devotees, or is there a role for writing as part of that introspection?
So sorry, the question is, does it happen in a family as a group or individually?
Individually, and is there a role for writing as part of that reflection?
Yeah, so wonderful, wonderful question. And again, it's so nice to see you face to face. I know we've communicated by email, but the answer is really yes in both to both of your options. So one thing that we try as a family is that when I listen to a lecture, or my wife listens to a lecture or read something, and something particularly strikes us, then we always like to share it with each other or with the children, or they'll share with us. And in this way, just psychologically, one of the ways to retain knowledge is to repeat it in different contexts. So if the only time you study something is in a particular chair in your room, in the office, then it doesn't retain so well. But if you express it in different places at different times to different people, it retains much more, it goes deeper. So sharing it in a family is a wonderful way to draw closer at the dinner table or in the evenings or whenever. But also there's a very important place to writing it ourselves. I know when I was listening to Prabhupada's lectures every morning, so while doing some exercise, I would listen to a lecture, and then there were certain points that were just so wonderful, and they were so useful for myself and for my work in so many ways. So I would try to, right after the lecture was over, to go back and to note down those key points. Or sometimes if there was not time to note it down, I would just record a little voice memo to myself on the phone, and then later on go in and type it up. So we can try different mechanisms, but there's a role to both. To sharing within the family, I think that's really wonderful, because when we share, often the other person we share with comes up with another realization to join with it. That makes our understanding of what we heard or read even deeper. And then there's also an element to creating our own notebook in relation to Prabhupada's books and his lectures, because it creates a certain map of our own, body of knowledge. It creates a map of our own to navigate through the literature, to navigate through Prabhupada's books. All of us, we need our own map to get through Prabhupada's books. The space in which we navigate is very different for each one of us, the things that'll jump out. So we should create our own study guides. The study guides that are given by devotees who have studied wonderfully is a very useful starting point. But ultimately, we have to create our own little map to navigate through this wonderful body of knowledge.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Prabhu, the next question is from Charuta. Charuta, please go ahead.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Thank you very much for the class.
Your voice is not coming. Sorry, can you start again? Your voice disappeared for some time. Maybe it was just my connection.
I'm sorry. Can you hear me okay now?
Yes, yes.
It was very inspiring, and a lot of what you shared with us today made me think of how, because misinformation is going so viral lately, so it's very important to look at.
Lost her.
I think we lost her.
Yeah, looks like we lost her. Prabhu, shall we take another question meanwhile while she joins?
Yes,
The next question is from Kalindi Sundari Mataji. Mataji, please go ahead.
I'm so sorry. There is some connection issues.
You're back. Please go ahead.
Okay. Thank you. So I'll get to the point. My question is, sometimes if people misinterpret the Shastras, or recently something happened to me, someone from India, that person came and said to me how he took Krishna's Leelas in a very wrong way, saying things like how Krishna would steal gopis' clothes or even steal makhan, or it was half-baked knowledge or immature understanding of knowledge. So in that case, how would you respond, or what's the best way to go forward with such type of interactions?
Yes, so actually these criticisms of Krishna have been going on not just now, but it's all the way back in the 18th century. There was so much criticism by British educated Indians, by the British themselves, about Krishna and his quote unquote immoral activities in relation to his character and so on. And so this is why people rejected Krishna's character and the Bhagavatam and instead focused on the Upanishads because they thought these were very clean and pure books that were easy to intellectualize and so on. So this when people have this kind of question or debate, I think the first thing we have to ask ourselves is, are they genuinely wanting to understand Krishna's nature? Or is this simply a way to argue or to justify because they themselves have no interest, right? And the reason I say is that we always have to start with seeing the motivation of the person raising the question, because then the response will be very different, right? If the person is asking genuinely because they want to understand, oh, what is Krishna, what is his nature, then we can answer philosophically very nicely. Why does Krishna do the ways in which why does he behave in the ways that he behaves? As the Supreme Lord, as Krishna includes all living entities within himself. So when he's behaving with the gopis in a particular way, he's not dealing with anyone else outside of him, right? The Bhagavatam describes it's like a person playing with their own reflection. When we do something like this to others, we're manipulating, we're misusing another living entity. But there is no other living entity for Krishna. Every living entity is part and parcel of Krishna, is part of his energy, is his Shakti. And so when he does this, there's nothing immoral, there's nothing wrong. To the contrary, he's actually increasing his devotees' love. He doesn't do this with me and you, right? Because he knows the effect that it will have. We will become angry and upset at Krishna and we'll give him up. But the people he does this with are people for whom this is the happiest moment of their lives, because he's drawing them closer to him. He's bringing them to a point where they have no one but Krishna to surrender to, right? Look at the reaction of the gopis in the Bhagavatam. Look at the reaction of Mother Yashoda when Krishna steals the butter. It increases their joy more and more and more, right? So we can explain it philosophically. We can explain it in terms of the relationship that is there. And ultimately, the philosophical point that we hear in Srimad Bhagavatam is simply that if you accept Krishna as God, and if God really means one who is beyond the human level, who is all powerful, then he is the one who defines morality, not the one who is controlled by that morality. And so, but again, if the reason for the question is simply because to agitate, because they have no desire to know themselves, but simply for the sake of argument, then it is no use to engage in such discussion. Then we tell them, whoever you like, you worship that person. Right? Krishna you can't appreciate, maybe you appreciate someone else. Right? Maybe you appreciate Lord Ram, or you appreciate Lord Shiva, or maybe you appreciate the Upanishads, whatever it is. Right? Start with that and move on from there. And make some progress further. So we have to really see where the questioner is at and whether it's worthwhile engaging in an extended debate or not, because a lot of the times it's not.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Kalindi Sundari Mataji, you are next. Kalindi Sundari Mataji, are you there?
Yes, you're not hearing me?
Now we hear you. Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay. Okay. Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you for your wonderful class. I'm as simple a homeschool mother and housewife. So I have a question regarding what you told about the mechanic thing about like Monday to Friday, the way the lifestyle, it's like very rush. So we do Adati, then read Bhagavatam, then do this, do that, do this, keep, and I have 2 kids, take care. And like this, sometimes I feel like, how much I'm thinking, I'm doing it. But sometimes I feel like I'm just doing mechanic way. And as you told, any with another, yes, only that's when that chant that come to mind, what we praying to Tulsi Maharani every day. So how to move to it in sense like thinking we do, especially Monday to Friday with like very rush time. That is like our life. How to do that, Prabhuji? How I think that I'm doing it with totally like in consciousness.
So wonderful question. I mean, first of all, there's nothing simple about being a homeschooling mother. It's really a very challenging, difficult, and glorious task. So it's as difficult, if not more, as juggling any job or managing any other duties. So it's wonderful the service you're doing, and it's nice to see your family and your children also. I just say that you know, it's like practicing an instrument, like learning how to play the piano. You practice, you practice, you practice, and so much when you practice, not every minute of your practicing is enjoyable or it's full of feeling. A lot of it is just mechanical. You just put your hands on the keyboard and you're just moving and moving, and you're just doing it, and you have to do it. Or any athlete will tell you the amount of practice they put into their athletic work is not, it's not all joyful and spontaneous. It's just a lot of mechanical work to get into that space. But there are times that as you're practicing, some feeling comes, some mood comes, where you really, you get into it. You're in that space, you're in that zone, and you're putting your heart into it. Right? And those are so valuable. Those are so wonderful. We have to treasure those. So the point is, as devotees, there's nothing wrong per se with doing things mechanically. We have to do it. This is the promise that we've made to Guru and Krishna, to do it, right? So we have to do it. And that's the promise that we've made, to somehow or the other to do it, to do our duties, to do our service, to do our dharma. But in that process, whatever those times and those moments and those opportunities are, when you can do it with some feeling, take advantage of that, grab onto it, right? And relish those. And when you get such feeling from Krishna, always remember it, treasure it, and remember it so that you can cultivate it within our heart, that we can recognize, yes, Krishna gave me something very special. Let me keep working hard for him. Let me keep trying. So we should not get discouraged by the mechanical nature of our work. That in itself, karma yoga is glorious. Doing our dharma is something that is glorious, right? Because that's difficult. In Kali Yuga, it's difficult even to do things mechanically, to just be steady like that in our mechanical practice. So we should be happy about that. But then take whatever opportunities you can to invest it with some feeling also.
And Prabhuji, my two kids, they're following the Arudha Mataji curriculum, and I'm always telling about you and how you all grow up, because it's all in the books. Please bless Prabhuji. I can make it. I can do my mother's duty. You success, you can bless. You have that capacity to bless. Okay?
Yes.
That's
yes.
my two kids. They are my life and soul. That's all.
Yeah,
If I done my duty with them, I'm ready. Then after my death come, I'm accepted. I did my duty. Okay?
Yes, even Krishna will be so pleased by that. It's not a small thing to make two living entities into wonderful devotees and bring them back to Krishna's lotus feet. So this is if we can, Prabhupada said, if we can make one devotee, his whole mission would be successful, right? And you're making two. So that's already double the criteria for success. So our sincere prayers are there for your children to become wonderful devotees and for you to succeed in your service towards them and towards your spiritual master and towards Lord Krishna. We certainly wish you the very best and hope that everything will be very successful.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, we have a question from YouTube viewer. Alek Prabhu, could you please go ahead and read that question?
Yes, Prabhu. So we have a question from our YouTube live stream from Mayank Sharma Prabhu. So he's asking that we sing Guru Ashtakam. We have many gurus, Srila Prabhupada, Diksha Guru, Shiksha Guru. So mostly I remember Srila Prabhupada. So how I feel I'm not offering, enough respect to others or directly jumping to Prabhupada. How can I manage?
Very nice question. Wonderful question. Actually, this goes back to an earlier question that Rukmini Prabhu asked about the medium versus the source. Actually, these two things are not separate in our practice as devotees. Should I think of Prabhupada or should I think of my own guru? Or how about thinking of my Shiksha Guru, who's given me so much affection and attention and careful guidance on a day-to-day basis? Or how about Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, the author of the song itself? Who was he singing to? And who was he writing for? What was the original song? Who was it written for? So these things are not separate. They're not distinct. They're not different in Krishna consciousness. Actually, there's no difference between source and medium. Every source is a medium, and every medium is a source. This is the very nature and definition of parampara, right? That the nature of parampara is every link on the parampara chain, Prabhupada says, is a transparent via media. Transparent in the sense that they do not block our vision of who comes before, or our feeling or our devotion to who comes before. And still they're a medium because they sharpen our perspective of who comes before. Just like the famous example of the glasses, spectacles, right? That the glasses are transparent via media. They don't block my vision of you, and yet they are sharpening my ability to see who you are. In this way, I'm deeply grateful and appreciative of the glasses. They're contributing something to my vision. And depending on the nature of the glasses, my perspective of the world is different. So it is, we should not see these things as separate. That when we offer our bhakti, our devotion, our love, and our gratitude to Srila Prabhupada, we are at the same time offering our devotion and our gratitude towards our own spiritual master. And when we offer to our spiritual master, it would be wrong if we saw our guru as separate from Srila Prabhupada. And if we saw Srila Prabhupada as somehow different than his manifestation in his wonderful disciples who function as our spiritual master, right? So this is when on Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur's appearance day, on Bhakti Vinod Thakur's appearance day, what song do we sing after Pushpanjali for the Aarti? We sing Gurvashtaka, right? We sing the same song. So are we not singing it for him on other days? No, we are. Every day we're singing for Bhakti Vinod Thakur. Someday the focus may be a little bit different. So, but the point is they're not different, right? So in the morning when we sing, yes, primarily we're singing Gurvashtaka for Srila Prabhupada. There is no question. But that is not leaving out our own spiritual master. Because how else are we able to serve Srila Prabhupada than by the guidance and the connection that our Diksha Guru gives? How else are we able to serve our Diksha Guru and Srila Prabhupada than by the instruction and guidance given by our Shiksha Guru? So we should not see these things as separate. And gradually, as we learn how to practice and sing with meaning, as we mature in our Krishna consciousness, these things start to come together. We see things as a holistic entity rather than as either or discrete entities and separate parts. So thank you for that question.
Thank you so much, Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhuji. So now the next question is Shadbu Chaitanya Prabhu. Please go ahead.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Thank you for a wonderful lecture, Prabhu. I have one question. It's regarding my uncle's. My uncle is one of the Gaudiya Vaishnava devotee, and he was initiated like 10 years, 15 years back with the Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya, not from ISKCON, but outside. But he's kind of always reads Bhagavatam, and he started living in Vrindavan, leaving his family in our native. But he did all those things. But in terms of philosophical things, he has some understanding. He reads a lot, but based on that, he always had a conception. When he was in a businessman also, nobody can give a suggestion or idea to him. He's that kind of person. The same thing, it continues in the spirituality also. His younger son, my cousin, he's also a devotee and he's also a Brahmin initiated. But whenever some argument sakes, they'll discuss anything about spirituality. But in case if you want to give an advice or if he makes some mistakes, if you say it's a mistake, whatever the knowledge he had in his head, it never came to his heart. It always like a kind of a dry philosophical subjects he'll be talking, nothing like a practical or anything like that. So in that, being a senior and he is a very elder, like my father's age, nobody can go approach him and then say which is correct or wrong. Even though if it is wrong, if he says it's correct, that we have to accept it. In that kind of mentality, like if I develop similar kind of mentality, how do I get down to the level of listening to others and then correct myself? I should understand that what I'm doing is wrong, because what he's doing is wrong, but nobody can correct him, and of course because age difference and everything, nobody can say anything to him. So in that scenario, how do we make him understand, or at least we should not go under that category?
Yeah. So this is everyone's challenge, right? This is the fundamental challenge of having knowledge. It's the fundamental challenge really of Krishna consciousness, is the fact that our very progress on the path can lead to temporary increases in a sense of accomplishment or superiority or pride that can make us less susceptible, less open rather, to receiving feedback and guidance from others, and progressing them further, right? So this is the classic anartha in our practice of Krishna consciousness, is the fact that our very practice itself, that is the knowledge that we get, the skills and the abilities that we get as a result of our progress on the path of bhakti, can lead us to water this weed of pratishtha, labha, and puja, this desire for position and authority and feeling that we are above others. So this is not a unique issue. It's there in all of our hearts, in everyone, as we progress on the path. And the most important thing we can do to prevent that, or when it happens, to recover from it, is to keep in the association of devotees. And keep in the association of devotees who are our peers and who are our superiors, both. Because each one brings something different. Our peers are there with us more often than our superiors. So they're able to tell us, and if we have truly a friendly relationship, they have the ability to say, what are you doing, Prabhu? This is, really? And they're able to argue with us, to correct us, to help us in a very friendly spirit, and it's easy for us to digest. And then with our superiors, we have that association, because when we stay packed up closely in that association, then we will be able to recognize, someone will point out these anarthas in our hearts, particularly those who are more advanced than we are. They will point out this anartha and help us recognize it when it comes up and give us an opportunity to overcome it. Right? So doing service in association of devotees, this is so, so important. Otherwise, if that association is not there, or if that association is not strong, that is, by strong association, I mean that we're serving in that association. This is the key, right? If we're just hanging out in that association, it's good, but it doesn't have that same powerful effect, because it's just too casual, and it can be very superficial, that association. When we serve in that association together, that's when the anarthas are revealed, and when the others can, just like I said, it's much easier to see the positive transformation in others than it is in ourselves. It's also much easier to see the faults in others than it is in ourselves, right? So when we're in that association, then someone will be kind enough to point out our fault, some fault that we cannot see, and help us overcome that anartha and keep advancing in that practice. So sadhu sangha is so important for that reason. Bhakti cannot be done on our own. And sometimes we have to be even more and more concerned about this as we advance, because the more advanced we become and the more senior we become, right, the less and less peer association we have, and the less and less superior association we have. In fact, it can come to a point where we are the senior-most in a community, or we are among the senior-most. And who is going to tell us what we're doing wrong? Right? And therefore, what association we have to hold on to for dear life. We have to take advantage. We have to make an effort. When we're junior, the association comes to us. You go to the temple and 10 people will come and tell you what you're doing right and what you're not doing right, right? And they'll say, do this service, Prabhu, and do that service. And we'll learn from that. But as we become a senior devotee, who is going to come and tell us what we're doing right? We have to go looking for that association and hold on to it. And when we get those rare moments of feedback, we have to think and take it seriously and be introspective. And because we have those years of experience and because we're senior, we will have the ability to think and we should have the ability to reflect on the feedback we've received and take it deep and transform ourselves. Whereas a junior devotee may need to hear it from 10 people 25 times, as a senior devotee, we may only hear it once from one person, but that should be enough for us. We have to take that seriously. So the point is we have to seek out that association as we become senior spiritually or we become older, because both age seniority and spiritual seniority both reduce the amount of feedback we receive. It reduces the amount of peers we have in our life and really reduces the amount of seniors we have in our life. So then we have to really seek out and value, hold on tightly to what little association we have, and we have to take that association seriously.
So much, Prabhu. I think it's very precise example. Like I feel the association is a main key thing for him because he never associate with anybody. Because even if somebody associates, he says, you don't know anything like that. That's how way mentality is. Yeah, thank you so much, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
So Prabhuji, we have 2 more questions, if that is okay with you, Radhika Raman Prabhu.
Yes.
Rajabhakti Mataji, please go ahead.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
How are you?
Good to see you. Yeah.
So it's not related to the class. It's a generic question about children. So Parikshit, I have 8-year-old. You saw Narahari at that age probably.
Yes.
So now he's Parikshit. So I teach him shlokas and things, Prabhu, but is there a method or any way that how do I teach him word to word understanding? And because the translation, some of the shlokas in Bhagavatam especially, they're so big, like a paragraph of translations to memorize. So is there any advice that you give us to help to teach the word to word understanding, and when they teach, learn the shloka with the meaning basically?
Yes. So getting them to memorize the meaning of every word, I think, is very difficult and not very palatable either. It's very dry to do that. I mean, even for an adult, what to speak of an 8-year-old. So I don't think that should be our goal. The better thing is that we try to give them some sense of the meaning in relation to the words. So just the key words. And one of the nicest ways to do that is to act out the meaning as you memorize, right? So, or after the child has memorized, then in practicing. So memorization, we can't do everything at once because it's too much for a child to go into. So, okay, maybe we first focus on memorizing the words and reciting it. But once the memorization has happened, then doing some hand gestures to act out the meaning, it really helps to have fun, to enjoy what is being memorized, to understand it, and even to make the memorization deeper. When they forget a word, then it comes back because they have some physical memory connected to it, right? So sometimes acting out, sometimes just telling them the meaning of specific words, or where have you seen this word before? Maybe they come across that word in a lecture, or even if you speak in Indian language, then they come across it in your speaking, they come across a word. And immediately you say, oh, what verse do you know with that word in it, right? So just trying to give them the key highlights of the meaning, I think is more important. And it's very practical in terms of doing it. It also makes the whole process of memorization much more enjoyable. I know when I was a child, there were some verses that we acted out the meaning that we did playfully. And I remember those even now, very, very well, better than every other verse I've memorized since then.
Thank you so much, Prabhu.
So Prabhuji, we will take one last question that is from Gopi Krishna Prabhu. Prabhuji, please go ahead.
This is the
Hare
ultimate
Krishna
question.
Prabhu, thank you very much for the class. I have a question related to what Rajabhakti Mataji said, and also in the class you mentioned about knowing the meaning. It actually takes you to the heart and you can really pray well. My problem is like, for example, Mukundamala Shloka, Kulashekara Alvar, right? So his poetry, he's in a highest level of devotion, right? He's offering that kind of prayer. But when I am as a neophyte, I'm really not at that level of devotion. So reciting those shlokas, now I feel like I'm not harnessed to Krishna. Like he is very harnessed and he is really doing it really from his devotion, from his heart. But understanding those meanings, and when it is not really, I'm not at that level, I really don't feel harnessed reciting those prayers in front of deities, right? So how do I reconcile this?
Yeah, so it's a wonderful question. Prabhupada, he gives the example, just like when a child wants to give parents some gift, for a small child, I mean, like 5, 6 years old, 10 years old, they want to give the parents some gift for a birthday or a Mother's Day or Father's Day. Then they go, they take their allowance or their money, they go to the store, they buy something and they bring it back, right, to the parents and offer it to them. Now, that money, in some sense, you could say the act was dishonest because the child is not really buying the gift, right? The gift was from the parents' money, the father's money, and being given back to the father. It was not something that he manufactured. It was not something that he had the ability to pay for. And yet, because the act of giving is there, therefore it's so wonderfully received and so happily received by the parents. It touches the hearts of the parents. So in the same way, when we're offering prayers that clearly you're reciting Mukundamala because there's something about those prayers that touches you, right? Otherwise, you would recite some other prayer. Personally, I love Mukundamala. It was one of the earliest prayers that I memorized, not all of it, few verses. And I like to sing. They're beautiful, they're wonderful. There's something about those prayers that touches your heart. And when you recite those prayers, that is what you're offering to Krishna. Okay, you're not making your own money yet in bhakti, right? You're still a child in bhakti. No problem, but you're offering something when you're taking that which belongs already to Krishna, that has been offered by Alvar Kulashekar to Krishna already. And by offering it again, you're offering something of your own heart. Therefore, it is not dishonest. It's actually very simple and very sweet, and Krishna appreciates that very much. It's, again, like offering Ganga water to the Ganges. The water is not yours, and the Ganga does not need the water. And actually, you didn't create the water, but you're giving something to the Ganga, and she appreciates it. Offering a deepa to the sun. What will the sun do with a little bit of light that comes from a deepa? So Maharaj Kulashekar, he's an amazingly advanced devotee, much beyond my level. Krishna is so pure that his pure bhakti, it's not there in my heart, right? But there's something in my heart that is expressed much, much better than I can ever say by Maharaj Kulashekar. So we offer that. We use that as a vehicle to give it to Krishna because we know Krishna likes that verse, right? We have a guarantee. He liked Queen Kunti's verses. He smiled. afterwards. He received them wonderfully. He appreciated them. So why not we use a vehicle that we know he likes? It's just like if someone really likes eating laddus, right? Now, I may not know how to make laddus very well, but I know he likes laddus. So I try my best to make laddus. Why don't I make jalebis? Because I'm not sure whether he likes jalebis or not. But laddus, I know he likes. So I give him something he likes, but made by myself. The prayers of King Kulashekar, we know Krishna likes. So we use that as a vehicle, as a container. We fill those prayers with our own bhakti, whatever little bhakti that may be, but it's real. We offer it into those prayers and we send it to the Lord. We float it down the Ganga and we say, this is for you, my Lord. That doesn't preclude offering our own prayers. So your point is very nice, that we can also give prayers that are 100% our own. Why not? We should have the ability to speak to Krishna, to tell him what is on our mind, to offer our own prayers to him. So let us, in our own language, whatever language we speak the best, we can compose our own little prayer to him. It may not be in beautiful verse, but it'll be something, and we can offer that to the Lord. So both things can be there, our own prayers, and we can take advantage of the prayers of the Acharya.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Prabhu. Very nice explanation. Thank you.
Thank you for your question.
Radhika Raman Prabhu, thank you very much for the wonderful class and amazing, practical, realistic answers for all the questions. It's been more than 2 hours now. Thank you so much, Prabhuji. So Prabhu, if you want, you may drop because we have a couple of quick announcements for the devotees. So thank you, Prabhu, once again.
Thank you so much for taking this, giving me this opportunity to have your association. I'm really, really grateful, and to see so many good friends from Columbus and from elsewhere. So thank you so much for the opportunity to do this seva today. I appreciate it.
Can we get your email, please? If we can write you sometime.
So Ramatirtha Prabhu can give you the email. You have his contact?
Yes. Okay. Yes.
Yes. So he can convey to you.
Thank you.
Yeah, also,
and I'll also send Dravida Prabhu's poetry to him. So
yes.
Anyone who wants that poetry, you can contact him, please, or you can find some other way, Ramatirtha Prabhu, however you like. Yes. But he is Dravida Prabhu is open to distributing.
Yeah, many devotees already expressed on the chat that they would like to have that copy. So if you could email me, I'll forward it to the devotees.
I'll do it right away.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
So Hari Prabhu, devotees, could you please hang out for a couple more minutes? We have some important announcements. Hari Prabhu, could you please take over from here and make the announcement?
Yes, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Let me share my screen real quick. Start broadcast. Can you guys see Sunday feast announcements?
Yes, Prabhu.
Okay. So this is the end of the Sunday feast. Here are the announcements. So this week's festivals. This Thursday is Pavitropana Ekadasi. So we fast from grains and beans on that day. And Friday is the disappearance of Srila Rupa Goswami, pictured on the right, and Gauridas Pandit, who's pictured on the left. And then so we have more this is the best. We have a lot of festivals now coming up, very big festivals. So Balaram Purnima will be on Monday, August 3rd. Sri Krishna Janmastami and Srila Prabhupada's appearance day will be on Tuesday, August 11th and Wednesday, August 12th, respectively. And Radhashtami will be on August 25th, which is a Tuesday as well. So we'll be celebrating the festivals a little bit differently now these days due to COVID-19, but we're still going to celebrate them, but it'll be very differently. And an email will be sent out to the community by this week, telling us what precautions we'll take and how exactly we're going to celebrate these festivals. So watch out for that email. Also on Monday, September 2nd is Bhadra Purnima, and Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 12, Chapter 13, Text 13, it stated that if on the full moon day of the month of Bhadra, one places Srimad Bhagavatam on a golden throne and gives it as a gift, he will attain the supreme transcendental destination. So this is a very good time to distribute Bhagavatams or give a Bhagavatam to a friend. So if you need some Srimad Bhagavatams, we're actually having we're actually giving them for a less printing price. So so you can contact me at my name's Hari, if you guys didn't know. So you can contact me at 614-592-0263, or you can send an email to info@isconcolumbus.com and we'll help you out from there. As well as, so this is the Krishna Lunch for this week. Our Krishna Lunch is getting ramped up, and and we're getting 20-30 orders a week. So that's been going really well these past 2-3 weeks. So it's on Thursday, it's going to be an Ekadasi feast. So if you like to order, you have to call or text Nitai. Please do not call the temple phone number. Your order will not be placed unless somebody picks up. So and don't text the temple phone number because they won't be there. We can't see text on the temple phone. So you call text Nitai at 740-972-7258 by 10 a.m. and you can pick up after 12:10. And then on Saturday, we're going to have an Ishta Goshti. So it's so instead of our Shravanam Saturdays program, which we have every Saturday at 8 a.m., we're going to have an Ishta Goshti. So we have all these wonderful speakers. So we really want to connect together as a Columbus community, and just see how we can serve better together, and how we can reconnect with each other, and after this pandemic, how to increase our service to Guru Krishna, and how to get better. So some highlights of this Ishta Goshti is some people have so we're going to have an anonymous chat box. So if you guys have any comments that you would like to remain anonymous about how to help our temple, so we have we have a chat box that you can write anonymous questions to. We're going to be talking about a lot of things, so please join the Ishta Goshti, and we would really be grateful if you guys join for that, and it would be really helpful for our community to grow naturally. So for next Sunday's Sunday Feast speaker, just like I think it's just by divine providence, our next Sunday Feast speaker is Dravida Prabhu. So it's really by divine providence that that Prabhu brought up the poem, and it was really amazing. So this next Sunday's speaker is Dravida Prabhu, and no Shravanam there's so Ishta Goshti on Saturday instead of Shravanam Saturday. So that's all the announcements I have. Oh yeah, and for Ekadasi, if you like to do some kirtan, online kirtan, we'll have a 3-hour kirtan from 5 to 8. If you like to be signed up, please contact Ramesh Prabhu and he will get you signed up. So are there any other announcements in the Vaishnav Sangha?
No, Prabhu, thank you, Hari, so much for the announcements, and for the creative way of presenting our announcements. It's really nice. I just wanted to reiterate about the upcoming big festivals in August. So we have Balaram Purnima, Janmashtami, Prabhupada Appearance Day, and Radhashtami. So please look for the email, community email, and also we would like to request any support that you can give. So Janmashtami is our biggest fundraiser. So any contributions towards that festival will be greatly appreciated. So once again, thank you all so much for participating in virtual Sunday Feast today. You have a wonderful rest of the day and week. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. Have a great Krishna conscious week, everybody. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Bol.
Good.